Hej och välkomna tillbaka. Vi ska fortsätta i vårt eftermiddagsprogram och just nu har vi hälsobolaget Saniona på scen. Trista Morrison är här. Hon är kommunikationsdirektör på Saniona och amerikanska, så att hon kommer göra en presentation på engelska. Welcome, Trista.
Thank you so much. All right, thank you for having me here today. I'm very excited to be here to present to you all about Saniona. We are a biopharmaceutical company focused on rare diseases, and we are an international company. So our scientists and our research is all based in Denmark, outside of Copenhagen, and our operations are in Boston, and that is where I usually sit. And we are publicly traded on the Stockholm NASDAQ. And so it's very exciting to be able to be here live speaking to all of you because I started at Saniona during the COVID pandemic, and almost all of my presentations up until this week have been via Zoom. So it is nice to have real people here and be able to enjoy the wonderful city of Stockholm. So I know time is short, so we will move forward. I will be making forward-looking statements. These are available on our website. So I want to start at the beginning and tell you a bit about why Saniona is focused on treatments for rare diseases. And for those of you who are very experienced biopharmaceutical investors, you may already know this, but in case you don't, you may be asking, why would you focus on a rare disease when you could try to treat a very common disease where there are more people who would need the medicine? So the answer to that is because there is a very high unmet need in rare diseases. There are approximately 7,000 rare diseases that have been identified, and less than 10% of them have treatments. And unfortunately, about half of rare diseases occur in children. So there's a very high need for treatments in this area. And because of that, the governments in both the US and the EU have come up with incentives so that companies like Saniona will want to help develop these treatments for rare diseases. The incentives are called orphan drug designation, and Saniona does have orphan drug designation from the FDA for our lead candidate in 2 rare diseases, and I'll talk more about that later. But what this allows you to do is have smaller, faster clinical trials. It provides tax credits, it provides reduced fees, and market exclusivity. So that is how companies are being incentivized to focus on rare diseases. And it has actually become a very successful business model. So along the bottom of the screen here, you can see some of the examples of biopharmaceutical companies who have built very large, very successful businesses focusing on rare diseases. Companies like Sobi, who I'm sure many of you know, in the US, Genzyme, Alexion, BioMarin, Celgene. There are many, many more examples. And I will also note that many of the management team at Saniona, including myself, including our CEO, we have worked at some of these companies. And so we have experience with this business model. I previously worked at Sobi in North America in the affiliate. So I want to tell you a bit about the rare diseases that we are focused on treating with our lead drug. The first disease is called hypothalamic obesity, or HO. Now, this disease is typically caused by an injury to the brain. Usually, it's a brain tumor, and when the tumor is removed, there's damage done to an area of the brain called the hypothalamus. And what that causes is it causes very rapid weight gain, and it also causes a condition called hyperphagia. And hyperphagia is an intense desire to eat Even if you have just eaten a full meal, you will still feel intense hunger. So it's insatiable hunger. And I think the quote in the middle here explains it well. So these photos are Ali and Silas. They are members of the HO community, and their parents have been kind enough to allow us to share these before and after pictures with all of you. And Silas's mom, Chelsea, she said, "We had to start locking cabinets, locking our fridge, restricting food, because if he got his hands on it, he wouldn't stop eating it." So this is a very difficult disease, and unfortunately there are no treatments right now. In fact, Saniona has been a pioneer in this area. We are the first company to ever get orphan drug designation from the FDA for HO. So I also want to tell you a bit about Prader-Willi syndrome, PRWS. So Prader-Willi syndrome is a genetic disease. So this is a disease that you are born with. But as you can see here at the bottom of the slide, there is some very similar symptomology. Again, you're going to see the excessive weight gain and the hyperphagia, that uncontrollable hunger. Again, William, who is a young PWS patient, provided a quote. He said, "It really affects me a lot. I can't really control my hunger, and it's just really hard for me to just not eat every single second." So I also want to point out to you that the photo of John, Eric, and Aaron, they live in a home for adults with PWS, and that is unfortunately often the trajectory for this disease. Because of that incredibly intense hunger, it is very hard for people with PWS to hold down a job or live independently. Now, there are no FDA-approved treatments for the hyperphagia. The one treatment that is approved is a growth hormone, which helps with some of the growth abnormalities, but again, it doesn't address the hyperphagia, and that is what the caregivers tell us is the most bothersome part of this disease. So what are we doing about it? I want to tell you a bit about Tesamet. Tesamet is our lead drug at Saniona. It is in phase 2B clinical trials right now for both hypothalamic obesity and for Prader-Willi syndrome. So Tesamet is a potentially first-in-class medicine. This medicine was discovered and developed in the labs of our own scientists in Denmark. It is a capsule, and it works in the reward and the appetite centers of the brain to increase the levels of 3 hormones. It's designed to increase dopamine, serotonin, and noradrenaline. And that, in turn, is designed to reduce the craving for food and reduce the appetite and increase the fat burn to help with the weight. Now, we've already studied Tesamet in phase 2 clinical trials for both HO and PWS, so I'll show you some of that data now. So this is from our phase 2 clinical trial in HO, and I'll explain this graph. What you see here, the gray line, is the patients who received the placebo. So you can see it dips down a bit, and then it goes back up. It dips down because all of the patients in this clinical trial were provided with diet and nutritional and lifestyle counseling and support as part of the trial. But it's difficult to maintain, so you see the weight go back up. Whereas the group who received Tesamet, that's the blue line, you see the weight go down and down. Now, when you get to the dotted line in the middle, that was the end of the double-blind period of the study, so that is where we do the statistical analysis, and we did find a 6.28% reduction in weight. That is statistically significant, and it's also clinically meaningful because the FDA has published guidelines for phase 3 studies for weight reduction, and generally they're looking to see 5% or greater. So we did achieve greater than that with the 6.28%. And then what happened at the dotted line is all the patients who were initially on the placebo, they were then given access to Testament. And so everyone then stayed on Testament for the remainder of the study. And then you can see the weight drop down there in the placebo group once they began to receive Testament. So that initial phase 2 study, that gave us what we felt was strong enough data to continue on into a much larger phase 2B clinical trial. This is the trial that we are doing right now. We're looking to enroll more than 100 patients, and this is an international trial. We have sites all across the US, all across Europe, Australia, other countries. The primary endpoint is that reduction in body weight, and we expect to have the top-line data in the second half of 2023. So now I'll show you the data from the initial phase 2 trial in PRWS. So, and this is the portion of the trial where we studied adults. You can see there was a reduction in weight, and then you can see the second graph shows the reduction in hyperphagia. And the reduction in hyperphagia was statistically significant, even though this is a relatively small initial phase 2 study. And so again, we felt that was grounds to move forward into the phase 2B clinical trial that we are doing now. So this is a second phase 2B clinical trial. This is a separate trial from the one that we're doing in HO. Also looking to enroll about 100 patients, a little more. Also across the US, across Europe, Australia, many countries. In this trial, the primary endpoint is going to be that reduction in hyperphagia. That is the endpoint that has been guided for use by a number of the advocates, and the FDA has aligned on it for PRWS studies. And we do expect to have the top-line data from the PRWS phase 2B trial in the first half of 2023. So I'm going to transition here from Testament to tell you a bit about what else we have going on at Saniona. And this is what I think is very unique, because oftentimes in the biopharmaceutical industry, you will find a company that has one relatively advanced product, right? Like one very good shot on goal. Or you will find a company that is very science-based, very early stage, has this platform of exciting science, but it's all preclinical, it's all very early. It's rare to find both of those things in one company. And that is honestly why I was excited to join the team at Saniona, and a number of my colleagues were as well. So I want to tell you a bit about our ion channel drug discovery engine. So an ion channel is, it's a channel inside of your cell, and it moves things like calcium and sodium into cells and out of cells. It's important in a lot of bodily processes. And in fact, ion channels have already been targeted in a number of approved drugs like Valium, like the benzodiazepines are, those are ion channel modulators. There's a number of cardiology drugs, a number of drugs that work on ion channels. However, ion channels are tricky to target. They're not stationary. They move, they open, they close, they have different subunits. And so because of that, about 80% of the ion channels have never been targeted with a drug. And so that's where Saniona has a real advantage. Our scientists have been studying ion channels for 20 years. They've been studying ion channels since before Saniona was founded. The whole much of the scientific group worked together at a previous company, worked together in universities. They have incredible expertise in ion channels. And so we actually have a database with data on more than 130,000 compounds, and 20,000 of those are proprietary ion channel modulators that Saniona owns the rights to. And that immense amount of data, it allows us to use artificial intelligence and build models and do virtual drug design and do lots of very exciting things to really nail down and create these new ion channel molecules. And we've already done it twice. We have a candidate in our pipeline, SAN711, which is an ion channel modulator, and it is currently in a phase 1 clinical trial, and we are expecting data from that trial by the end of the first half of this year. And we believe that drug may be applicable in rare neuropathic disorders. We have a second drug, SAN903, that has come out of our ion channel platform. We expect to be advancing that into the clinic this year, and we have seen very good preclinical data in rare inflammatory and fibrotic and hematologic disorders. So when you put it all together, this is what our pipeline looks like today. We have Tesomet in phase 2B. We have SAN711 coming up behind it in phase 1. We have SAN903 getting ready to move into phase 1. And as I mentioned, we have 20,000 proprietary ion channel molecules behind that, which we will begin to advance. And in fact, we expect to advance the next one of those into this pipeline, into the pipeline chart later this year. So I'll just go over a few milestones before we wrap up. 2021 was incredibly busy for us as far as building the foundation of the company. This 2021 is when we got the orphan drug designations from the FDA for Tesomet in both hypothalamic obesity and in Prader-Willi syndrome. It is also when we started 3 clinical trials. We started that phase 1 trial of SAN711, and we also started the phase 2B trials of Tesomet in PRWS and HO. So very, very busy year last year. And this year, we're looking forward to, as I mentioned, we're looking forward to the phase 1 data with SAN711. We will be moving SAN903 into the clinic. We'll be moving another ion channel modulator into the pipeline. And I haven't talked much about this, but we do also have some partnerships. One of our partnerships is for a molecule called tesofensine. It's being studied in Mexico for general obesity with a partner called Medix, and it's under regulatory review right now. So hoping to hear more about a potential approval for that in Mexico this year as well. And then, of course, next year, the phase 2B data in PWS and HO. So this is our vision. This is how we are working to build a successful rare disease company. And this is how we hope to become as big and successful as those companies I showed you on my first slide, right? It starts with Tesomet in HO and in PWS. And third-party analysts estimate that Tesomet could be worth over $1 billion, that's US dollars, in peak sales annually. SAN711, we have not chosen an indication yet because it is still early, but again, we have good preclinical data compared to benzodiazepines. That's well over $1 billion US dollars market. SAN903, we have good preclinical data against idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, which is a rare lung disease, and that's over a $2 billion US annual market. So this is how we see the value beginning to add up over time. And then behind that, we have all the ion channels. And then behind that, we'll look at LCM, which is life cycle management. That's where we take the more advanced compounds and we start to say, what other indications could they be used in? What else can we use them to treat? And then I'll also mention here business development. I haven't talked a lot about that, but it is actually a quite big focus at Saniona because last year we hired a chief business officer, and she is very focused on seeking business development deals for us which could generate non-dilutive funding. And so with that, I'll just wrap up with our investment rationale. Again, we have 3 clinical trials ongoing. We have a deep pipeline of exciting science behind that to keep moving forward and keep feeding that clinical pipeline. We do have validation from multiple strategic partnerships. I mentioned the partnership with Medix, but we also have partnerships with Novartis and Boehringer. And we have significant market potential for the products that we're bringing forward because they serve significant unmet needs. These are diseases where there is no treatment and where a treatment is sorely needed. And so with that, I will wrap up and we can take some questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Trista, for a very interesting presentation. Lots of things going on, an important year for you.
Yes.
If we look at the slides. And we can start off with one question. I know that Rami Levin, the CEO, he has earlier talked about a possible dual listing of Saniona in the US, since you have quite a lot of presence in the US. Is that something that you still look at, or?
Yes, yes, that we are still evaluating a potential listing on the US NASDAQ as well as our current listing here on the Stockholm NASDAQ. We do have a growing presence in the US. We are intending for the US to be the first market where we will bring our products forward. And so we have been having meetings with a number of US investors, and we have heard feedback that it would be easier to invest in us if we had that dual listing also on the US NASDAQ.
Okay, but this process will go on during the year, or?
Yeah, I can't really give any guidance for the timing, only because we're publicly traded. But we are actively evaluating it, and I will certainly keep you posted. We'll keep the market posted.
Yeah, sure. You're describing a little bit about your non-diluting financing deals, and what are you looking at? Do you look at license agreement or selling your products right off, or could you elaborate a little bit about what your plans are for your business manager?
Yeah, sure. So Saniona's business strategy overall is that we would like to bring our products to the market ourselves in the key markets, right, which would include the US, Europe, like key markets. We would like to do the whole process ourselves. And the reason for that is because if you out-license to a partner, then you get, a payment, a upfront fee, you might get milestone payments, you get a royalty stream, but you don't get to retain all the value. If you can do it, if you can bring it to the market yourself, then you get to retain all of the value, all of the economics. And because our team is experienced in doing that, that's exactly why our CEO, Rami Levin, was brought on board, because that's exactly what he was doing for Sobi when he previously ran the North American affiliate for Sobi. So we would like to do that ourselves. However, we also recognize that at the time that we are ready to bring Tesomet to the market in the US and then in Europe, we're probably not going to be a global company. We're probably not going to have operations in every country in the world, right? And there may be countries where we wouldn't be ready for that yet, and so we would seek a partner. And so that's something that we're certainly interested in, because we do want to make sure that any patients around the world who need our treatments are able to get access to them. So we would certainly be looking at partnerships for that. And in addition, those 20,000 molecules, they're probably not all going to be a fit in a rare disease. We're a science company, and we will follow the science. And if we see that there are some molecules that are maybe a better fit in a common disease, that we don't have the infrastructure to run the huge clinical trials, then that could be a partnering opportunity too. So really there's a lot of opportunity. Wendy is very busy right now.
Well, it sounds interesting. We will have to follow that, right?
Yeah.
We have some questions regarding hyperphagia, how do you spell the disease?
Hyperphagia, the symptom.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you fully treat the people with that, or do you only sort of help them on the way, or can you cure them? If you understand my question.
So we think we can have a significant impact, right? In the PRWS study, where hyperphagia was one of the endpoints that we studied, the graph that I showed, you might remember, it had a decrease of about 8 points on the hyperphagia scale. And there have been some surveys and some studies done that the community, the caregivers are looking for. They think even 1 point reduction would be meaningful. But what what they're looking for is maybe like a 5 to 7 point reduction. So we think that we can definitely have a meaningful impact, the kind of impact that the community is looking for.
Okay, very interesting. And the competition in this area, how does that look?
So in HO, there's very, very little competition. There's only one other company that I'm aware of, one other biotech company that is doing, I believe it's an exploratory phase 2 study. In PWS, it has been a more crowded field. Unfortunately, there have been a lot of setbacks. It's tricky. PWS has been tricky, and so we have learned from the setbacks that other companies have experienced, and we have tried to design our clinical trials with that information in mind so that hopefully we can optimize the chance of success.
Yeah. Sounds hopeful. Testament is, of course, focused for this year, I guess. And could you tell us a little bit about the recruitment process for this clinical trial? How has that developed so far?
Sure. So we just started both of these trials in the fourth quarter of 2021. And so basically what we're looking to do, we have a CRO engaged, a clinical research organization. They are engaged and they will be managing the recruitment process for the trial. We also have partnerships established with the patient advocacy communities in both PWS and HO, because the communities are very eager to spread the word. They have incredible reach to the patients, and not just in the U.S., but all across Europe. There are a number of advocacy organizations in both PWS and somewhat in HO as well. More in PWS, it's more established. But the groups that we do have in HO are very engaged, and they've already been working with us and providing us with a lot of really interesting information that has helped us to design the clinical trial. Like for example, the phase 2B studies that we're conducting right now, they are decentralized clinical trials. So that's a model where, as much as possible, you're gathering the data in the patient's home. So sometimes that is done virtually. Sometimes it involves sending a nurse or a healthcare worker to the patient's home. And the reason that the trials are designed that way is, not only because of COVID concerns, but also because these patients tend to do better in a familiar environment. They can be sometimes triggered behaviorally when their routine is disrupted. But there are some times where they do need to go into the hospital or go into the clinic, and the parents have told us, they've helped us understand on those times, make sure that you give us directions to the part of the hospital that we need to get to where we don't walk by the cafeteria, because someone who has hyperphagia does not want to walk by the smells of food. Just things like that can really help us make our clinical trials easier for the patients and a more pleasant experience for the patients.
Okay. When it comes to new drug candidates, you were talking about that for a little bit. And how much could we expect from Saniona going forward? Is it like one candidate per annum, or is it more? Because it seems like you have quite some library, right?
We do have a lot of candidates, and it's interesting. The library grows all the time because I was actually just talking to our scientists last week about the new program that we're advancing and hoping to bring into the pipeline. And they were explaining to me, it isn't just that you pick one of the 20,000, it's that once you focus on the ion channel and you find that one, they start to generate 1,000 more. So, they're really, they said that 20,000 number you present is probably outdated. We could probably, increase it because they're always working on that. So, as far as how many we bring forward, I don't want to make any promises. I don't think our scientists would be happy with me if I did. But I will say that they've committed to me that they're getting very close on this next one. And so that one we're going to bring forward this year.
Okay. Very interesting. Thank you very much, Trista, because we need to move on in our program.
Yes.
Time is out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.